Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is OCTAVIANO and I'm from 5C class English Education Department of ANZKA Riau. So in this video, I'm going to present to you about analyzing and interpreting quantitative data. Steps in the process of quantitative data analysis. First is preparing the data for analysis. Next is begins the data analysis. The third is report the results. And the fourth is interpret the results. First, preparing and organizing data for analysis. Preparing the data analysis consists of 5 points. The first is score the data. Second is types of score to use. Third is selecting a statistical program. Fourth is input data. The last is clean the database. Score the data. Scoring data means that the researchers assign a numeric score or value to each response category for each question on the instrument used to collect data. For continuous scales, such as interval scales, you should consistently score each question in the scale using the same numbering system. For categorical scales, such as what level do you teach, blah 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 high school, blah 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 middle school, blah 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 elementary, you can arbitrarily assign numbers that make sense, such as 3 for high school, 2 for middle school, and 1 for elementary. To make scoring easy, you can pre-assign numbers on the instrument to each response option. One procedure that can aid you in assigning scores to responses is to create a codebook. A codebook is a list of variables or questions that indicates how the researcher will code or score responses from instruments or checklists. Second is types of score to analyze. First is single item scores. These scores provide a detailed analysis of each person's response to each question on an instrument. Second is sum scores. Responses to a single question may not be reliable or may not accurately reflect an individual score. The last is difference scores. Some scores for individual are used to develop an overall test score that can be compared from one time period to another. Net or difference scores are scores in a quantitative study that represent a difference or change for each individual. Next is selecting a statistical program. Find a program with documentation about how to use the program. Ease of use is an important factor when selecting a program. Look for a program that includes the type of statistic that you will use to answer your research question and hypothesis. Make sure that the program can analyze the amount of data in your database. Locate a program with the capability to output graphs and tables that you can use in your research reports. If you need to purchase a software program, weigh the cost of the various programs. Select a program that your campus uses so that you can find assistance to answer questions when they arise. The fourth is input data. Enter the data from your instruments or checklists into your computer program. Last is clean and account for missing data. Determine if there are errors in the data or missing data. First, cleansing the database, and the last is assessing the data for missing data. 2. How to analyze the data. Conduct descriptive analysis. Using statistics, the calculation of values based on numbers. Many helpful books provide details about different statistics, their computation and assumptions. We focus here on the statistics typically used in educational research. Choosing a descriptive statistic test. There are 3 points. First, by measures of central tendency, you can use mean, median, and mode. By measures of variability, you can use range, variance, and standard deviation. And the last is by measures of relative standing. You can use percentile rank or standard score. Conduct inferential analysis. The basic idea is to look at scores from a sample and use the result to draw inferences or make predictions about the population. Often you cannot study the entire population because of size and cost, So we instead examine a sample that has been carefully chosen from the population. When you study the sample and obtain scores, several approaches exist for determining if the sample scores you receive are a good estimate of the population scores. Hypothesis testing. There are 5 points. The first is identify a null and alternative hypothesis. Set the level of significance or alpha level. Third is collecting the data. Fourth is compute the sample statistic. And the last is make a decision about rejecting or failing to reject the null hypothesis. Using confidence interval. Confidence interval provide additional information about our hypothesis test. A confidence interval or interval estimate is the range of upper and lower statistical values that is consistent with observed data and is likely to contain the actual population mean. Researchers set a confidence interval around this mean value of the sample to illustrate the potential range of scores that are likely to occur. Moreover, this occurrence is framed as a percent, such as 95% of the time, 95 out of 100. The population value will be within the range of the interval. Moreover, this interval can be identified by upper and lower limits, the values that define the range of the interval. Determining the effect size. Identifying the practical strength of the conclusion about group differences or about the relationship among variables in quantitative study. A practical measure of whether means differ is simply to look at the differences and determine whether the differences is meaningful in a practical sense. This is the procedure of calculating effect size. Effect size identifies the strength of the conclusions about group differences or about the relationship among variables in a quantitative study. 3. How to report the results. You can report the result by using tables, figures, or present results. First is tables. Summary of quantitative data organized into rows and columns. 2 is figures. Summary of quantitative information presented as a chart, graph, or picture that shows relation among scores or variables. And the last is present results. Present detailed information about the specific results, the descriptive and inferential statistical analysis. 4. How to interpret the result. You can interpret the result by using this. The first is summarize the major result. A summary is a statement that reviews the major conclusion to each of the research question or hypothesis. This summary is different from the result. It represents general rather than specific conclusion. Specific conclusion in the result would include detail about statistical tests, significance levels, and effect size. Next is explain why the result occurred. Often this explanation is based on returning to predictions made from a theory conceptual framework that guide the development of research question or hypothesis. The third is advanced limitation. Researchers also advance limitations or weaknesses of their study that may have affected the results. Limitations are potential weaknesses or problems with the study identified by the researchers. 4. Suggest future research. Future research directions are suggestions made by the researcher about additional studies that need to be conducted based on the result of the present research. Okay, I think that's all from me. Thank you for your attention. And I'm so sorry for all my mistakes. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.